The Philadelphia Phillies are back to being the best team in the National League, but you would not guess it from some of the conversations surrounding this team. In this video, I want to dive into the conversation of Rob Thomson and his recent managing of the team and why it has some Phillies fans specifically fired up here. Now, I want to talk about initially what sparked my interest in this, which was a quote from John Middleton, the owner of the Phillies, and a guy who I believe is the model for how a team should be owned in the professional leagues. Now, before I dive fully into this, do want to make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button here. That at this point in time, 92.1% of you guys tuning into this channel have not subscribed just yet. So I want to grow this Phillies Digest family as large as possible. We're coming in for the home stretch of baseball, and I want each and every one of you a part of it. Now, to get into the topic of today, I see takes like this all the time about Rob Thomson, such as Rob Thomson needs to be fired. He's a horrendous manager. Been saying it for 2 years. Rob was given the keys to the best team we've ever seen, and he still can't do anything. It's embarrassing. And while I do think this is quite strong as when it goes to Thomson, there are certainly things that you can critique about his management style. And the one that really sparked, I think, this outpour from Philadelphia fans and Phillies fans specifically was his decision not to pinch hit for either Cal Stevenson or Garrett Stubbs in the tail end of the final game. Now, yes, they did take 3 of 4 against the Nationals, but they did have the foot on the neck and could have gone for the throat there to get the sweep, win all 4 games, and Thomson kind of elected not to do it. It is very clear that the philosophy at this point is when guys have an off day, as Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto were sitting on the bench right there, that it's an off day. It's not a pinch hit day. It's a day in which you are not playing baseball. Now, what sparked my interest in doing this video is we did get a couple different quotes here from John Middleton that I did want to pull up. And once again, the owner of the Phillies here, and he said, quote, "It may be a privately held business that we own, but it's not a private organization. It's a very public organization. We have an obligation. We are accountable to the fans and to the city. If you don't approach it that way, you shouldn't be the owner, in my opinion." And I love this. This fires me up from Middleton's perspective. He is truly a man of the people, a guy that I've firsthand seen chilling in the 200 level and the upper deck areas of Citizens Bank Park, just kind of hanging out with the fans, tossing out baseballs. He's a regular guy, despite being an owner, and a guy who has spoken with his wallets that his intention is to win. Now, what he said that I think contradicts a little bit of the way that Rob Thomson has gone about things was this next quote here. And he said, quote, "I don't think you can just sit there and say, oh, well, this has happened and therefore we'll turn it around. I don't think you can be that passive," he continued. "I think you have to be pushing and pushing to rethink what they've been doing. There's coaches, and then that's players. Everybody has to step up and say, what are we doing wrong? Why is a team that was winning at a 700 clip for 3.5 months now playing at a 325 clip for the last 5 weeks? And this, of course, going the 8-18 spell, which he labeled a significant issue. And I do love this mentality. I honestly think it's been far too passive from the Phillies' response. While I appreciate the leadership from guys like Kyle Schwarber, talking about the belief within the locker room that they know they've done it before, they're going to turn things around, it just did not happen for far too long period of time. And while it feels like they're kind of working themselves out of this rut here, we got to see it. And now the test will really be this series against the Atlanta Braves. That series will be starting tonight at the time of recording, so very excited to see how things go down here. But a couple different areas that I do want to go with this. Now, Rob Thomson is a guy who obviously took over for Joe Girardi and provided this team with the spark that was straight up necessary. It was a talented roster that was underperforming, looking on the outskirts of not even having any playoff hopes, and ultimately they turned things around, went on two deep playoff runs under Rob Thomson. Now, he has his pros and cons as a manager. What I think he does incredibly well is balance egos, manage personalities, and show his belief in the team. There's little moments that you see throughout the season, such as when Christopher Sanchez had his complete game, watching him walk on the field, and Rob Thomson being the first guy at the top of the stairs with a handshake, pat on the back, a nice job, and just showing his belief. I think he does that incredibly well with players. What I don't think he does incredibly well is be a guy that is able to win a couple games. That I think over the course of a Major League Baseball season, you should be able to rely on your manager to just pull some strings that gives your team an advantage in a way that results in a couple wins, just a handful of wins over the season. Whether it is pinch hitting at a certain situation, whether it is making a certain pitching change, things like that just really impact the flow of the game. I don't think that's something that Topper is excellent at. And if you want to look at the postseason track record, this has been something that has bit the Phillies in the foot. That I do think that his overall trust in these guys, players like Nick Castellanos, or the big ticket players that they're clearly relying on, that he's unwilling to kind of shake them up out of their routine, even if it is for the benefit of the team here. Now, to not be too hard on him, the reality is this team just straight up has to play a bit better. That it was a number of guys simply not playing at what their baseball card suggested. Of course, we have Bryce Harper. We have other guys that I think are more of the culprit here. Trey Turner at the top of the list, who was on a tear shortly before the All-Star break and seemingly a little after, but certainly has cooled off again. Bryson Stott has been a guy that has failed to take that next step in the way a lot of us hoped and expected to be the case this season. So do hope that that shifts around there. And of course, a guy like Alec Bohm certainly has, and looks like he's back to his ways, although he went through that cold stretch as well. The bottom line is it is on the players to perform, but I do think Rob Thomson's a guy who could show a little more initiative in backing things up and showing that they need a kick in the butt sometimes. That for all that there is and that good faith and showing trust, you still got to be the guy to fire up a team when that opportunity calls. Now, this is not a shot at his track record. He's the winningest manager in Phillies history. You can absolutely criticize the day-to-day decisions like Saturday, which was not making that pinch hit. But the reality is he has been getting the job done to a major extent. Now, the other factor that I did want to just put in people's minds here and think about is I do think there's a real chance that this team is a little more beat up than we're giving credit. And one of the things that led me to kind of this thought process here is I was looking into the lineup ahead of the Braves game today, and there was a delay in it coming out. And shout out to Matt Gelb of The Athletic, who tweeted out that the Phillies do not have a lineup yet. Rob Thomson said he's waiting for a few guys with, quote, wear and tear to hit in the cages before making decisions. And that did kind of perk my ears up a little bit there, that I did think that was strange. This was the normal time in the day that you would expect the lineups to be in at the time of me recording this, and that was not the case just yet. Now, at this point, we have seen the lineup, and most of the familiar faces are still in there. Bryce will be playing. That was probably the guy that I had the top of my radar for maybe he is dealing with a bit of an injury. And if that is the case, that certainly makes sense why you would not want to throw him out there for a pinch hit. But what I think the disagreement is, and where I think there's this little bit of a disconnect between both John Middleton and Rob Thomson here, is baseball is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and we all know that. That no matter how hard we want it to be the case, you cannot win a World Series in the month of July or the month of August. It takes until October to ultimately, and really November, for it to totally be the case there. But I think Thomson is a little bit more content with just going through the ebbs and the flow of the season. I know there's ups and downs. He's a guy who's been around baseball forever, but I do think there could be a little more killer instinct installed in this team. There are guys that have it. Bryce Harper at the top of the list, a dude who very clearly can smell blood in the water and wants to go out there and take games. And if you want me to be honest, I can't imagine in that specific situation on Saturday that Bryce Harper wasn't itching to get to the plate right there. I can't imagine he was thrilled watching Garrett Stubbs and Cal Stevenson hack away as he's sitting there with a bat on his shoulder just hanging out for the day. And I understand this was certainly pre-planned that he gets a day off, but Bryce is a guy who had 2 pinch hit at-bats last year. JT is a guy who had double-digit at-bats. I believe 20 is the number off the bench as a pinch hitter. This has clearly been a philosophy change within the Phillies organization. While I know that 2 sounds light for Bryce Harper, it's not all that often that he's not playing, and even rare that specific opportunity in which a game-changing at-bat is at the plate. There was a tying run. It would have been the tying run at plate. There was a runner on the base path at that point. The game could have been shifted in one swing, and ultimately Thomson decided that wasn't worth it. He would rather allow Cal Stevenson and Garrett Stubbs to fight through it. And for the Garrett Stubbs conversation, I still hear the critiques wanting Marchand up. My bottom line to me is I don't think it matters to an extent that neither of these guys are going to see the field or see the plate when we get to the playoff time. Sure, you could want a better bat than what Stubbs is currently providing for this team, but the reality is I think it's a shakeup that wouldn't be the kick in the butt that this team needs. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded if this team went another direction and sent down a Brandon Marsh or a player like that to really show this team, but then you're going back to this battle with the personalities and egos in the way that I do think Thomson overall navigates incredibly well. So ultimately, this Phillies team just has to get together a little more. They will face the test that we truly need to see with them. That this Braves series is huge. And sure, from the statistical standpoint, that I still feel pretty great about where the Phillies stack up in these standings. I'm still feeling pretty great as far as the inside track for that National League. But the reality is, if it does come down to a handful of games so they don't get that top seed in the way they desire, you're looking at moments like that 4th game against the National as a reason why that is the case. So I know that it's a marathon. I know you can't win it in one game, but I do need a little bit more urgency from Thomson. Ultimately, we'll see if he's learned his lessons when the playoff time comes, the management of the bullpen, the shakeups of the lineups, and those type of things. But I think there's nothing wrong with experimenting with this Phillies team right now because there will not be a better time to do it. You have to know what you have going in when you get to that playoff moment, and this Phillies team, that better be the case. I think we can kind of acknowledge that they are a hot and cold team, the Nick Castellanos, the Trey Turners of the world, that they have their moments where it feels like they're hitting everything, and then it has their moments where they look pretty lost at the plate. And overall, shout out to Castellanos. I think has very clearly been his best season as a Philly so far. Been really solid throughout the year, and a guy that I think has gone a little under the radar as far as acknowledgement has gone. So quick shout out there. But the reality is, pretty much top to bottom, this team still has to be a little better than they have been, and we're going to find out real quickly in the playoff time if that is not the case. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I being too soft on Thomson? Should I probably be more fired up about the lack of urgency that he's showing. I do kind of lean towards the side of things that I appreciate him bearing with the team and allowing them to play through the mistakes. And I think that the success does speak for itself as far as what we've seen the past 2 years. But obviously, the goal is still a World Series, and he has to find a way to pull those right strings. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. And once again, make sure you are smashing that subscribe button to keep this Phillies Digest family growing. And I'll be talking to you next time. Peace.